Welcome to Benevolent Business, the podcast exploring how to build a business to positively impact society, the environment, employees, and much more. Discussing with business leaders and founders to see what drove them in this direction, their unique experiences, and what we can all learn from their journey. Brought to you by our host, Hayden Bloomfield, and producer, David Proud.
It's me.
So welcome back. We're on episode 2. I think we've done quite well there, episode 2.
Yeah, that was. I really enjoyed that interview. It was a nice one to get started with.
This week, we're joined by Amanda Thomson of Thomson and Scott. But before we get started with that conversation, producer David, it's over to you. Let's learn a bit more about how you explore benevolence in your own business.
Yeah, so for me, it's almost like the story of my business. Until I actually really think about it, I think, oh, maybe I'm not that benevolent. But then thinking about the little things that I do add up to a benevolent business. So for those that don't know, I run a video production company. Been doing it for about 9 years, focusing on businesses. But a big thing for me is actually giving back to charity as well. I've built up these skills over years. So why can't I offer those skills to charity for free most of the time, or if it's quite a big charity at a heavily reduced rate? So some of the things I've done in the past, I touched on it last week, but I did. Well, actually, when I first got started, I was running a half marathon and I was doing it for the Aspinall Foundation. And so I got in touch with the fundraising team and I said, I'm raising money. Can I come in and make a couple of videos that are helping me with my fundraising? And they said, yeah. And it was a great experience. I got to go around with a keeper, go in the cages with the lemurs and hand feed them and all that sort of stuff. And I created 2 videos about the work that they do and where the money goes. So that got me started. Since then, I've kept it quite on the animal theme quite a bit. So I've done a local animal rescue charity that rescues farm animals that are going to be slaughtered because they're no longer useful to the farmers. So, like ex-battery chickens and old sheep and things like that. So that was really lovely because she needed help raising more money. I've done work for the local RSPCA because my partner works there. So if they've got some animals that they're struggling to find homes for, I do a nice video that tells them about the animal, shows their personality, and usually within 1 or 2 weeks, that animal now has a home after not having one for 6 months. So that's really nice. And then recently, over Christmas, I went and filmed for the local Rotary Club. And one of the projects they do every year is feeding the homeless and families in need as well. They give them a Christmas meal every year. And I was saying this to you earlier, Hayden. So last year was their biggest year with 170 meals. This year, they've had to give out 550 meals.
That's an extraordinary leap. That's
COVID, isn't it? So, you got a lot of people that have lost their jobs, and universal credit I just don't think is enough to survive on. Yeah. So a lot of these people, that'd be something they're really looking forward to. I'm going to be doing like a thank you video from the person that organises it to all the volunteers, which will be done in the next week. And then just another video which they'll release at the end of 2021, which will be trying to help them get more donations and more volunteers as well.
So you mentioned there obviously different works you've done. 2 questions. Why? So what is it that inspired you, motivated you to do these free projects? So thinking that's obviously you giving your time to them, going out producing the work and doing it all for free, or as you mentioned, with bigger charities at a heavily discounted price. So what was your motivation there? And also, what was your motivation to veer towards animals and wildlife a lot more so than anything else? It
sounds really cheesy, but one of the things I love doing is helping people. So even when it comes to the business videos, one of the main reasons I love doing it is because I love helping businesses achieve what they want to achieve. So they want to sell so many more products. I make them a video that does that and then seeing those results. So that carried over to the charity side of things, it's like a double bonus because I know that it's not just to make money, it's actually doing some good, especially when it comes to like the videos for the RSPCA. As I said, they'll have dogs there that haven't found a home in 6 months. And the problem is dogs are obviously very social creatures. So the longer they stay in kennels, the more stress they get, the more their behavior goes down, and it's, just a bad spiral. So you're very time sensitive on how quickly you can get these animals out. So if I know that a dog hasn't been able to, no one's come in to see that dog, even though it's been on the website and promoted on social media, if no one's come in to see that dog in 6 months, and then I put a video out there for it, and then they'll have 10 inquiries in 2 weeks, and then that dog finds a home. You can't get better than that, really. So I guess I think it's selfish in a way because of the feeling that it gives me, but I don't know. I feel an obligation that I've got this equipment, I've built up these skills. Why can't I use that to help other people? I'm not going to quote Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. But it is that thing, isn't it? If you've got the opportunity to help people, if you've got the opportunity to make someone's or something's life better, why wouldn't you do it? And I guess that comes on to the animal thing as well. I've always had a big passion for animals, which made me turn vegetarian and nearly vegan like 4 years ago.
Oh, I didn't know you was vegetarian.
Yeah. So again, it was that mental disconnect in my head, right? So I loved eating meat, but then I was like, yeah, but I also love cows and pigs and chickens. You know, I think they're all awesome, and I wouldn't kill one myself. So that disconnect between loving something and then killing it to eat it, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I found that after you do something like that, I think your mindset changes a little bit because you no longer have to have that contrary opinion in your head. You sort of think, man, why was I doing that for so long? I mean, that's if you hold the belief that you love animals and you wouldn't want to kill them. If you're like, yeah, I'll kill an animal, I don't think it's really going to work the same way. But again, it's with animals, they can't stand up for themselves. They're so affected by us and by our lives, whether that's cutting down rainforests or it's animal abuse in our homes in England. It's something that they have no control over whatsoever. So if I can do something to help them in that way, then I think that's really powerful.
No, I definitely agree. That's really incredible. It was really interesting thinking. It's a strange thing. I never knew you was vegetarian so you went vegetarian 4 years ago. I went vegetarian about 2 years ago, but it's interesting to hear your reasons behind it. And
so my
reasons were more to do with health. I was learning so much more about just in terms of the human body, trying to stay healthy, increase my sort of nutrition levels and just make sure I want to be as healthy. And a lot of it was down to business performance. So I wanted to make sure that I could concentrate for as long as possible, that I could grow a business as quickly as possible. So it's all selfish reasons. And then the more I learned about the meat industry, how it's all kept, how it's reared and how it ends up on our plate was just like repulsive.
Yeah.
And how unhealthy it is for us as well. And yeah, that just put me off meat completely. And from there, so initially it was all health and well-being was the reasons that I didn't eat meat. So like I was a big meat eater. I loved the idea of just like a fry up. I loved if I went out for a meal, I'd probably choose a mixed grill. The idea of having lunch without some sort of flesh in my sandwich was a bit off-putting. And that was it flipped one day. I was of the mindset that, I could quite happily watch a cow die and see it all chopped up in front of me and put it on my steak, like put it on my plate, I'd have it blue. And then when I became vegetarian and I became more aware and just, again, going on this whole journey of having a business and striving for benevolence, then I started to get to grips with, because my girlfriend's vegetarian as well, but hers was more animal rights. Because it was interesting in our relationship, I was always like, I'm gonna get you eating meat again. I'm gonna get you eating meat again. And then now I'm saying to her, I'm gonna make you vegan one day. But as I spent more time vegetarian, it then became apparent and dawned on me just like the whole concept of killing an animal to eat is when it's completely unnecessary. And the way that they're reared is just.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I think it's mindfulness sometimes because when we have these things pre-packaged, it's easy to separate the actual fact of where it's come from. Because I don't drink milk, I really limit my cheese. I think I'm pretty much done with cheese now because vegan cheese is pretty good. But people go, well, nothing's dying to make milk. And then you got to ask, well, what has to happen to an animal for it to be able to produce milk? Okay, it needs to have a baby. What happens to that baby after it's been born? Yeah. If it's a female, they'll probably raise it to be another dairy cow. If it's a male, gone.
But as well, cows are very maternal, and
don't.
Yeah, exactly. Like the amount of stuff, the amount I've learned over the time of that, and just the whole thing with like cow's milk. Because I'm the same. So like at home, I'll have like a variation of different milks. Soy milk's my top of the list, but I try and avoid milk, and just the idea that it's just like this weird chemical hormone juice.
It's tough for me. I guess it brings it back to the benevolent thing again. But I don't like to talk about the vegetarian and vegan stuff. If someone asks me about it, I'm happy to talk about it. But I don't want to impress my views on other people, because I believe that you should make your own decisions. But do I have an obligation to challenge people who don't think about these sort of things, because it might change their mind? It might make them reevaluate how they think.
It is an interesting one. It's and as well, like in my own perspective, like same thing with you. There's going to be people that like disagree with me on this when I say, I don't want to like force my views and things and say, no, you're wrong for eating meat. But then on the other hand, the more I learn, I'm just like, do you not realize how gross it is?
Yeah.
So we've obviously learned a little bit there about how your business is benevolent. So how do you want to strive for further benevolence, and how do you think this podcast will help you achieve that? What particular things will Proud Business Productions change, and how will it develop and evolve?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you got my business right, because most people call me Proud Productions. It's good that you pay attention.
People always get my name wrong and spell it wrong, so I always make a point with names. I'm like, make sure. And if I don't know the name, I just don't say it. I'll just say your business. Yeah,
I'm going to look out for that now. So my big thing for me at the moment is I want to get to the point of building a team. So I'm interested in the wellness factor of it. As I build a team, I want to keep them happy and keep them healthy. So how to do that? But then there's also the other side of the environmental side of things. So when I first came up with this idea of building a team, because before that I just wanted to be a freelancer and work for myself, I thought, I want an office that we all go into every day. But now I'm thinking, do I actually need that? I mean, yes, it's good for the creative process to get in a room together and brainstorm ideas and things like that. But, the cost of the fuel to get there, the cost of all the electricity and stuff in the office as well, and all these little things, is that something that I actually need for my business? So I'm looking forward to talking to people who do those sort of things a little bit differently, how they work in their teams differently, what they do to give back to their staff, because I want to build a workplace where people never want to leave. I employ someone and they're with me for life.
Yeah, that's very similar to my business. It's interesting. And so for anyone there in employee wellness, and if you're a founder in wellness, then get in touch. We can have a chat. But yeah, definitely. There's a really good point, especially like with the pandemic and all being locked in and locked out of our offices and such. So yeah, why do you need an office? And as you said, like when you think about the electricity involved, the journey, the fuel, that impact on the environment.
Even the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to work up in London, and it was an hour and a half journey each way. So, getting up at 5:30 in the morning, getting back at 8 in the evening, I had to be in bed by 9:30 to get back up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So it's that's no life, really, is it? I can't say I was particularly happy in that job.
Yeah, exactly. When you think about it, you'd all be probably happier and healthier just meeting in the woods somewhere, going for a little nature walk, sitting down on some old logs in a little circle and brainstorming ideas.
Yeah,
as you said, like the whole benefit of being in that office environment with people is the creative outlet, is having those conversations, bouncing ideas. You don't need to be in four walls, sitting on a chair, getting a bad back. You can just be walking around in your wellies, splashing in puddles. And
when we're allowed to meet up again, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with a safe social distance and everything. So with that being said, let's jump straight in now to our conversation with Amanda, who has built a successful business and has achieved the accolade of BCorp status. This week, we're joined by Amanda Thomson, CEO and founder of Thomson Scott. Disrupting the wine industry, producing vegan-friendly organic wines with full transparency on what is on the label. Founded in 2013, having already achieved the accolade of certified BCorp status. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Hayden. Nice to meet you.
And you, thank you for giving the time to come on. So, to break the ice and crack on, can you give us, in a quick 15-second snippet, what exactly is Thomson Scott?
Sure. We're the first global wine brand to make incredible wine that focuses on cutting sugar, being organic, being vegan certified. In the case of our groundbreaking alcohol-free, also halal certified. So we bring the party, but without all the nasty chemicals, basically.
Amazing. So, in my background research,
if I understand rightly, you were brought up on a vegetarian and sugar-free diet. So was wine sort of your vice then growing up, or what has inspired you to create and disrupt the industry?
Yeah, you nailed it. Champagne was my buzz, actually. That was really my thing. And in the arts world, I used to work for the BBC way back. And we used to party very hard. And that's when I started to realise that I was eating a really great diet, but knocking back all kinds of wine that actually had no ingredients list on the label. That was kind of the light bulb moment. So, yeah, champagne was my vice, essentially.
So with that being said then, to me, so I'm vegetarian myself, and to me, wine, I can't imagine it being vegan. I can't imagine it not being vegan or vegetarian. So what makes a wine vegan, or what makes it not vegan?
It's a really good question. And of course, most people are like, well, what do you mean? There's no pig's trotters in my bottle. It's not quite that literal, obviously, but it's to do with filtration, animal products, particularly dairy, but also bull's blood. Back in the day, we used to filter wine, and these days a lot of milk products and dairy are used. So actually to have vegan certification means that you're not using those animal products to fine your wine. Fining's to do with so you don't have like those bits in the wine, the sediment.
All right, okay. So with that being said then, in the process of manufacturing the wine, and how did you go about finding suppliers, or was that a massive challenge for you to then find a vegan-friendly supplier and producer?
Well, it's really interesting because there's actually probably a lot of vegan-friendly wines out there that don't publicise their vegan credentials. There's a really interesting irony in the wine business that the best wines, or those that wine critics consider the best wines, the finest wines of Burgundy, for example, many of which will sell for many thousands of pounds a bottle, are made in a biodynamic way pretty much. So that takes organic really to a new level. This is to do with biodynamics in wine. It's quite a spiritual thing. It's to do with stirring certain manure products by the moon. I mean, you get into real what most people consider hippie trippy stuff, and yet these really expensive wines are made that way. But the wine business really has always been historically quite a close industry, so it sort of does its thing really quietly with this wonderful nod to history. You know, actually winemakers are farmers essentially, but the way the commercial world has gone, it's almost like the secrets have been preserved. So no one's really talked about how wine's actually made. And of course, if you go back in history, people used to tread grapes with bare feet, hopefully clean ones. And of course, that is the old-fashioned way to make wine. And ironically, the beautiful way wine should be made now in terms of innovation is looking back to history. But as has happened with processed food, to drive down price point, you know, to £5 a bottle in the supermarkets, or sometimes worryingly even less, and to drive up volume, exactly like processed food, that's where you chuck in sugar, you chuck in chemicals, and you end up with a liquid that really bears no resemblance to what good wine should be. Hence the headaches, really, you know, that idea of, you know, why do I get a headache after like half a glass of something? Well, let's talk about what's in that bottle, you know?
Well, I'm learning a lot about the wine industry I never knew. So
yeah, it's crazy.
It sounds like you really are disrupting the industry massively. So in doing that, that is one huge mission on its own. And yet within, 7 years you've been going. So in 7 years, you've achieved BCorp status. So how did you achieve, or what was incentivizing you to achieve BCorp status?
Well, 7 years is an interesting one. So 7 years, 2013, I registered the company. I moved back from France. I'd just done my studying. Actually, in terms of properly launching the portfolio, I guess it was more like 2016 when we launched Prosecco. But yeah, 2013, I founded the company. And the BCorp thing was a long-standing obsession of mine. But they're notoriously diligent in a good way. And that's why so few companies actually have that status. It was quite a long road to get the certification. But because our company was set up from the beginning to have the mission to be sustainable, eco-friendly, organic, you know, to be as open as possible about supply chain, all of the sort of credentials, if you like, that the BCorp status is founded on, to do ethical business, actually, you know, holistically, it wasn't as hard as it might have been, but there are still a lot of hoops to jump through to get your certification, as there should be, and have it mean something. Of course, in 2020, with everything that's happened globally, B Corps are having even more sort of spotlight put on them. So it was fortuitous that I'd gone out after that, quite doggedly. And I think, like most of the best entrepreneurs, once we get our teeth into something, we don't let go. And it's really just keeping on, sometimes putting, 20 steps forward and then 30 back. I always sort of talk about entrepreneurship to newbies or people considering that, that sort of linear idealistic journey is so far from that. And I think that's how the term pivot has come about. There's a joke amongst secret entrepreneur circles, a pivot is like a complete rip everything up and start again, but we just never quite say that, right?
In my head, just reading how you're doing it all, it just seemed like two massive missions that you're on, but so they did entwine quite well. But as you said, you started up straight away, already steps ahead of most companies what they would be in going towards B Corp. But did you find to really get down and get to going through all the paperwork and the credentials that you had to become a certain size before you could, or is it something?
No, it's not actually to do with size. No, we're a lean startup that actually doesn't need a lot of staff to grow. We use tech now, and different ways of growing. So no, it's not to do with being a big company. Far from it. It's to do with having a lot of ethical boxes that you can tick to validate that you're doing everything in what is considered the right ethical way, I suppose. So it's nothing to do with size, more to do with diligence, ethics, and a lot of paperwork. Is required in that situation. In
this mission to obviously achieve B Corp status, is to create a industry disrupting brand. What sort of challenges have you found in that? So in being on such a mission to create such a positive business and one that is ethical, that does meet these criteria, what have you found there's been setbacks and challenges within that?
There's setbacks and challenges every day, I think, for entrepreneurs, Hayden. I think any entrepreneur who doesn't admit that is lying, actually. I think after some time, you start to see setbacks as stepping stones just to really get to your goal. I think what I've done from the start is have an end vision, a point where I see where I want to be. And so that visualization, I suppose, has been very important. It's this idea about whether you're just so immersed in a blinkered way with the day-to-day of entrepreneurship that you can easily lose sight of that end goal. So I suppose I'm always working backwards, where I'm thinking, what is my end goal? And then what do I need to do to fill in the gaps to get there? And that for me is quite an important part of explaining entrepreneurship as I see it, and why I'm still here, having fought big fires, small fires. Yeah, if you've got a global vision to change an entire industry, you're sure as hell going to have fires to fight every day. And it's just a question of whether you choose to keep fighting the fires and you choose to get up in the morning and be as positive as you can about dealing with the issue. And that's, I think, why I'm still here growing, Have you ever had to compromise in your beliefs at any point in growing a business? Every day almost you're compromising, because you haven't got the money you want, you might not have as big a team as you want, you might not be able to travel internationally due to COVID. Entrepreneurship is a life of compromise, but it's how do you compromise without losing sight of your goal, essentially, I think.
In building a business, and sort of, you said you've managed to rely on tech a lot, and so you can keep a minimal sized team then, but in still finding team members, to whether they're working for you or working with you, how have you gone about then finding people that really match your values? Because I can imagine in building a business that you are ethical and you have got those standards that you want to meet, and obviously every single person you bring into the business has got to meet that criteria. So, because to me, in my own business, staffing has been one of the biggest challenges in getting people on board with your vision and your ethics. So what's that sort of journey been like for you?
I'd like to say it gets easier, Hayden. I've spoken to some incredible leaders. I think people are the hardest bit, because as a founder, no one will have the passion you have. Even if you give them share options, you pay them well, whatever you can and can't do, usually you're struggling to pay them as well as a corporate would, so you're having to sell them on the journey. it's a really tough one. And I think you break a lot of eggs along the way. I mean, we've had early stage a revolving door of trials with young people, particularly young people, because I think often it's very easy to engage younger people in the vision and that sort of exciting bit. But I think the gap between what people think entrepreneurialism is about and how hard we do or don't work versus how hard we actually work, I think is quite a big one. And I think sometimes people have been shocked in the past when they've joined Thomson and Scott about how hard we work and about how obsessed we are. And I think that is not easy to find people who share that vision. It takes a while.
So you mentioned at the start there, like this sort of revolving door where you're trialing people coming in and out of the business. So is that sort of short term, whether that's weeks or a couple months? But like for me, I've had a similar experience where you take people on and sort of, because there's only so much you can get to know about someone going through interviews and whether they're practical or face-to-face conversations. But have you found that in itself has been a setback or a big challenge, bringing someone into your business to then start handing them responsibilities? And then obviously if they're not entwined with that, everyone's going to do it in different ways. But have you had the situation where they're just not doing it to your ethics, to your standards? How have you?
Many times. And I think it's a compromise, getting back to that word you used, between recognizing whether it's fair that they can't manage it, but they're still a brilliant staff member, or they just aren't up for the long-term job. And that's only something I think you can learn as time goes by. You know, as a leader, I make mistakes. We all do. And particularly if you're a first-time CEO managing a team. So I think it's a question of not being too hard on yourself when you reflect, but ultimately saying, what have I learned? What could I have done better? You know, was it to do with me that they haven't really achieved? In early days, I realized my expectations on people were potentially unfair, because I'm thinking, well, why aren't you doing it like me? Why aren't you doing this? Why, you know? And I think you've got to balance off that obsession as an entrepreneur with recognizing that they've got to have work-life balance, and they're not passionate to anything like the same level you are, but they're still passionate. So I think there's a learning part for us there as leaders as well.
So do you find that you learn as much from all these employees that you work with as you have done just by running a business yourself? Absolutely,
100%. I think anyone who doesn't have a growth mindset will not make an even vaguely good entrepreneur. I mean, I came from journalism, so I was a question asker. I grew up, I would say I came out of the womb asking questions. I've always asked a ton of questions. You know, that's a journalist's way, right? So I transitioned then into being an entrepreneur. How do you learn? You ask questions. So I think if your ego is tripping you up and you don't feel comfortable asking questions, how do you learn? So absolutely. I've always sort of believed that you try and surround yourself as an entrepreneur with people smarter than you. Now, I'm not saying in every aspect, every member of my team is smarter than me, but a lot of, I think I would say they all are in many particular ways, and that's what I would want. I think it's so important to still be challenged. I get challenged regularly. And I think those checks and balances externally are very important, because while I'm very confident in my singular obsessive vision, that doesn't mean there isn't still a hell of a lot for me to learn on this earth from other people, you know?
No, yeah, phenomenal points you made there. And Amanda, I want to echo that, because for me, that's been the biggest thing is in building a business, taking on staff. Like, you're going to make so many mistakes, but actually being able to sit back and go, what did I do wrong? And try and bring the situation back to yourself and go, right, this person's reacted that way. There's been an altercation, or there's something's gone wrong. What have I done wrong? Or how could I have done it differently so that next time? And I think the more mistakes I've found, the more mistakes I make, the more I can learn. So in building having your vision, your mission, like just from the 15 minutes we've had, you're very clear cut. You know exactly what you want to achieve. And with that, do you find money is a driver for you?
So money's a driver because I'm competitive for a number on an exit that I shook hands with one of my investor advisors on. So I think you'll find with most entrepreneurs, I'm making a sweeping statement, but probably it's not really about the money, but it's about the money as a number because of the competition. And it's also about, I think, for a lot of people, certainly me, what I could do with the money that's useful in terms of next steps and starting again with the next mission. So I think it's almost a form of competition. I think you'll find most entrepreneurs are pretty alpha competitive, or at least have some degree of that. But in terms of it being a driving force because I want to have a fast car and wear fancy clothes, absolutely not. And I also have not seen that in entrepreneurs. I've seen entrepreneurs exit, make money, and buy a fancy car and do all that. And then, of course, within a very short space of time, realise that they're ready to start on the next venture and it didn't actually fulfil them. You know, I think that's kind of the interesting thing about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So money's more of the driver for money is knowing the more money you can obtain, the more you can impact, the more you can do with your company. Obviously, if your company's got £100, there's not much you can do. If your company's got millions, you can really diversify. You can reach into new markets. You can go international and all sorts. So that's really great to hear that this.
Well, actually, as much as that, it's also the idea of shifting the industry. So when I make a big exit, I want the whole industry to have shifted and recognised how wine should be made. And actually, a lot of our messages through PR, because we're really noisy in the organic PR online world, you know, we make a lot of noise online because that's how we built with our marketing budget. And we're getting all the traction now slowly. You know, I got out the sugar message about sugar being added to wine. Organics, we've been big on. We were the first UK brand to talk about veganism in wine. We're now the first global brand, really, as far as I can see, to have produced an incredible alcohol-free that's halal certified. And of course, the halal certification was very important to me because huge amounts of people don't drink for religious reasons. So the Muslim community, of course, they don't make a big noise often in the corporate world, but they'll be, you know, often having to drink really sugary drinks and things just politely. I'm talking about my London friends. And of course, they didn't have a drink that brought them to the table. And of course, naughty in the corporate world, amongst the Muslim community, amongst people who don't drink for all manner of reasons, then emoliates the situation and brings people to the table without that awkward moment. Oh, you're not drinking? Oh, you know, Brits are terrible for that. Oh, you're not drinking, Hayden? Whoa, you're so boring. You know, you may have a gazillion reasons for not drinking. I'm learning from naughty, whether, you know, whatever it is, pregnant and hiding it, religious, ex-alcoholic, whatever, you know, for me, that shouldn't be the most interesting thing about you. And it also shouldn't be something you have to discuss if you're not comfortable discussing it. So what naughty alcohol-free does is it gives you a seat at the table with a glass of fizz. You know, you might be drinking champagne, prosecco. No one cares. Let's talk about something else, you know?
So many missions in once, you're really reaching out to as many people to make sure, like, anyone that is sort of exiled out of that community or being able to enjoy themselves. And as you said, like, as soon as you said that, I was like, so many times I've been in that situation where people are like, oh, you're not drinking. Why not? And you have to, it's like a negative you have to explain, but you're actually reaching out to so many different people to make sure they can all feel included and be part of the group and not feel that they have to justify their actions. So that's huge. But so with that then, and Thomson and Scott, you've got a mission you want to get on. So what is the world around drinking you want to create? What does the future of wine or the whole industry look like to you?
See, really, for me, it's that simple idea of bringing the party, but without the headache afterwards, you know, and that's sort of a singular mission and essentially why the business started. I've always loved to party, but I've hated the headache afterwards. And so for me, you know, at the moment, we've just created a really tightly edited portfolio. We've got limited edition champagne, prosecco, and naughty alcohol-free. Got a couple of bits that we're innovating that will also come to market. But the sparkling wine space for me is the epitome of the party. You know, so it's that idea of celebratory moments, you know, naughty celebratory moments, you know, alcohol-free, but still bringing the party to that idea of drinking beautifully or not drinking. You know, let's just all stop playing the global drinking world in this really ugly space where we're just consuming a ton of nasty chemicals. So even when people can't afford my bottles, I see, look, you know, just have a think, maybe just buy one organic bottle from the supermarket, spend a couple of pounds more, just get a really basic organic wine from the supermarket instead of that £5 bottle. So there's a really simple upgrade and you just know you're not having as many of those nasty chemicals.
No, you've definitely inspired me there. I've definitely been guilty of that.
We all have, Hayden. We all have. And, you know, my brand is not about being sanctimonious. We're about saying, once you've kind of thought about it, it's kind of a no-brainer. So it's a bit like eating. And I think everybody has recognized if they're going to have junk food, they know it's not good for them. I just think it's about recognizing that if we're going to have dirty alcohol, make it just occasional, and the rest of the time we can still drink alcohol and alcohol-free, whatever we want to drink, but just try and make it a little more pure, No,
that's a great thing, because it does have such negative implications to the entire industry. And it's great to see what your vision is. And realise we're wrapping up for time. So I want to ask you one final question on the topic of benevolent business and making the world a better place. What is one thing, Amanda, that you see within humanity that you hope that in the future will be gone and be a thing of the past?
Well, right now I'd say racism. I think for me that's topically the most heartbreaking issue that's on my mind at the moment, I would say. So in a perfect world, we'd recognise that is just insanity. So that would be my top thing. Very,
very relevant, very on topic, and I'm completely in agreement with you there. I do hope that one day we are a world where, we're all unique, we're all different, but there's no reason to put someone aside or put them down for that. So thank you, Amanda, so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. And you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So there we have it. Thank you, Amanda, for taking your time and having a chat with Dave and myself. And truly another great, inspiring conversation.
Yeah, one thing that stands out to me is when you're in an industry like that, it's very old. It's been going a long time. It's very old-fashioned. Things have always been done a certain way. It's really nice for a business like that to come in with fresh new ideas that want to change things up, that want to make things better, and they have to sort of fight against the grain a bit to actually get there. But it's good to know that there are businesses out there doing that.
It's really opened my eyes in terms of understanding the industry, the wine industry, and how just things like where Amanda was talking about labeling, what we don't realize is going into the products, and talking about like vegan wine. And as we discussed, like, isn't all wine vegan? Like what animal product is used in grapes and fermented, or whatever the process of wine. But then obviously in that conversation, we learn the whole process of it. And it really is interesting to see and hear and understand more of the industry and how they are disrupting the status quo and creating a much more benevolent industry for the future.
Yeah, and that's just made me think of another guest or guests I'd like to get on the show, actually, who are the co-founders of Brewdog. Do you know much about Brewdog?
A little bit, but yeah, they've been on the list. I'm pretty sure, like, I've got this whole spreadsheet of people I'd love to get on, and they are on the spreadsheet.
So they,
guys.
I'm now a shareholder in Brewdog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, thanks to my girlfriend. She bought me some equity for Punks, which is their shareholders program. And one thing of that is they give you like special edition beers. So they just put out a new one where you've only got to pay for the postage because they've just become carbon neutral. Actually, sorry, no, it's not even carbon neutral. They're carbon negative. So they're actually removing more carbon from the atmosphere than they're putting in, which is absolutely incredible.
Well, as a valued shareholder, I definitely think you should get in touch with them, Dave.
Yeah, they're going to listen to me with my 2 shares.
That would be a wonderful conversation to learn about that journey of carbon neutral to carbon negative. And yeah, as you said, having a company that actually is purely benevolent, it has more of a beneficial impact to the environment than it takes away in its production.
Yeah, so I'll get started on that one. Unless anyone out there knows anyone connected to Brewdog that you can put us in touch with.
So with that being said, if you have got any questions, comments, theories, or if you'd like to feature on the show, or if you know someone that could feature on the show, then get in touch. You'll find the links to our socials in the description of each podcast episode. And then you can also get in touch with me personally via email, and it's hayden.bloomfield@hotmail.com, which you'll also find in the description of the podcast.
See you next week.
See you next week.